Hey guys, Doug Giles here. Rich, it's Warriors, and
Wildmen. What's happening, Doug?
I forgot, man. I had a senior moment. I got the Warrior stuff. And then thank God, man, you were there to
I'm always
flesh
here to
it out.
back you up, man. I'm here to back you up.
Hey, we're talking about finding, following, and finishing the call of God on our lives. This part number 2 in regards to the call.
And listen to part 1 because it was
you
good.
got to.
I'm not saying it's good because we did it. I'm saying it's good because it was encouraging to me. I liked it.
Yeah, Paul was called for a purpose. Jesus told him that when he knocked him off his high horse. He said, for this purpose. He didn't say, Paul, because I love you so much and I'm your personal savior, I'm going to keep you from roasting for all eternity in Dante's Easy Bake. He didn't say anything about that. Listen, if Christ comes to you and just boom, opens your eyes, turns you from darkness to light, just say, all right, what do you want me to do? Don't just stay there. Don't just talk about, you being warm and bubbly and the effluence of God's afterbirth. Ask him what you should do. And then like a hound dog, start pursuing it. That's what Paul did. Who else did that, Rich? Moses, other people like that. And they had this thing called an adventurous life, an abundant life. You look at guys like Billy Sunday, used to be, or C.T. Studd, baseball players and stuff. And they're like, bam! They go into frickin' China and turn the place upside down. That's the kind of stuff that I dig. I think we well established, Rich, that it doesn't mean you have to be a minister. You can be whatever, arts, business, education. Who cares, what field you're called to? Just understand that is a legitimate call. Yep. It is not a lesser call than a missionary or Mother Teresa or any pastor that schleps this third rock from the sun. It is legit.
Absolutely. Right? Yep. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm looking at this verse, Matthew 16:24-26. Jesus told his disciples, and like I said before, if anyone will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. So if we're going to follow him, look, man, you don't get to follow Jesus where you want to go. You got to follow Jesus where he's going. So he called Paul to salvation. Then he called him to do some things, and he specifically said, I want you to go here. I want you to wait there until this person comes and sees you. After that, he's going to tell you what I want you to do for me. And the great many, and what he told the guy that went and prayed for him, Ananias, he said, I want you to go tell him the great and many things that he must suffer for my name's sake. Like that's answering the call. The call is not, I'm trying to decide, do I want to do this or you need to follow Jesus. You need to follow Jesus. You got to follow Jesus today, not one day. I know a guy, Doug, and he would tell me, I have this dream and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. 10 years later, he's telling me, man, I have this dream and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Well, now he's old, Doug, and it sounds foolish because it ain't going to happen. It's impossible now. Like, unless he's Abraham. And because
you're on a ventilator.
He never answered the call. He got the call. Right. Look, man, if you call me on my phone, Doug, it doesn't work unless I push the green button. Jesus is calling. People got to answer, man. Push the green button and say, okay, tell me where to go. Tell me what to do. That's answering the call. If you don't do that, forget it.
Again, in regards to the call, if you look at a lot of boring Christians, Rich, and look, me and you got to admit, you and your current pastorate, mine when I was in ministry, a lot of great guys, a lot of great girls, a lot of boring ones also. If you tap into his eternal calling, you're not going to live what Henry David Thoreau said was a life of quiet desperation.
That's right.
It's not going to be boring. Look at Barnabas, man, like what I talked about at the Warriors and Wildmen conference. Barnabas, rich cat, landowner, decides, you know what? These guys are under persecution. I'm going to liquidate my assets, got rid of his land. And listen, where I come from in Texas, land is sacred. I think it's the same way all over the planet. And I bet Barnabas people were thinking, or the demons were telling Barnabas or his relatives or some stupid Christian, dude, why'd you do that? You could have held back a little bit of the money. And Barnabas is like, yeah, and Ananias and Sapphira did the same thing. And
their calling was over.
Yeah, they've got all access laminate passes to El Diablo's lair right now. So, I'm going to give it away. And I bet he had no idea, brother, the magic carpet ride that he was going to go on with Paul the Apostles. He saw Paul as legitimate. He went and did incredible feats, and you can track his story through the book of Acts. All of it by him just hearing the call, hey, man, I ought to give away my yacht right now to a ministry. I ought to give away my land right now to this ministry. And then boom, the next thing you know, again, he might have been a bored, good cat, just watching his nut hairs turn gray. And he's thinking, listen, I can smell God on these cats. I don't need this stuff. My kids are ingrates. I'm not going to bequeath it to them. I'm going to give it to these boys, and let's freaking light up the joint and see what happens.
There we go.
No, I guarantee he had no idea whatsoever what was going to happen in the course of his life. He just heard the call, give up my stuff. And like you said, he did it. He died right there to it. It's like, I'm dead. I'm done. Let's see what happens. And I'm telling you what, man, he wasn't living a life of quiet desperation.
Nope. Doug, but that's the deal, right? So we talk about calling. Some people want to jump on it, and they want to talk about their call. Some people are so satisfied to have potential without ever realizing the potential. And the older you get, like I was saying, it becomes more and more foolish, right? Well, there's people that are homeless that have potential. I've met some of them that are brilliant. But if you don't realize your potential, then you're not answering the call. If you mentally assent to it and say, yes, God has called me, and yes, I have, that doesn't mean anything. Like, that doesn't mean jack if it's not followed up. In 2 Kings, it's when Elijah calls Elisha. The Lord said to him, 2 Kings 19, he says, go back the way you came, anoint Hazael king over Aram, also anoint Jehu, Elisha the son of Shaphat, to succeed you as a prophet. So he literally told Elijah, hey, I got the guy that's going to take your job. Time's running out. You're going to train this dude. He's next. And Elijah obviously was not a very kind and popular person. He didn't like that. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. He himself was driving the 12. He was working, Doug. He wasn't laying around at a prayer meeting. Elijah.
No, he was working his Facebook prophecy page.
Yeah, right. Yeah, see, that stuff is stupid, right? He was working. And it says Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him, and he left. Now, when God tells you to anoint someone, you're kind of expecting, something.
On.
But Elijah's like, you can have it. You're next. I'm done. I'm out. And maybe that's my interpretation, Doug. But I didn't see anybody get anointed like that. You saw when Jehu got anointed, he got sent by Elijah. Elijah didn't go. He didn't want to get dead. He sent one of the sons of the prophets to go. He said, come over here in secret, poured oil all over him and said, you're the king. I'm out. Whoa, he rolled, But there's two interesting things on that. Is that neither one of those people were shocked. Jehu was like, I know what to do. He walks in covered with oil and tells the other generals, guys, it's time to kick butt and kill the bad guys. You know why? Because he knew he was called, and when he was activated, man, it was on. What does Elisha do? He takes the mantle. He doesn't go, man, I have the mantle of Elijah. He runs and he's like, man, let me say bye to my family. And it wasn't like the guy that told Jesus, let me go back. It wasn't the same. Elisha said, let me go back, say bye to my family, I'm going to follow you. And Elijah, because he's so awesome, says, what did I do to you? I don't care, go back, do whatever you want, because he's so awesome. And so Elisha runs back, cuts up the plow.
That's not very Christian, that's not very loving.
Cuts up the plow, not all of them, one of them, which signifies this is over, sacrifices the oxen, throws a carne asada get down right there with the boys, says adios, and chases Elijah, not so that it becomes Elijah and Elisha, prophets. He was known as the servant of the prophet, the one who poured water on the hands of Elisha, because he knew the call. It wasn't something that caught him off guard. God had been dealing with him, had been talking to him, but Doug, there came a day where you have to answer, you have to follow, you got to drop the nets, you got to leave the plow behind, you have to say goodbye, you got to come in
donkeys.
like Jehu, you got to come in like Jehu with oil all over your face like a wild person. You're like, I know you guys aren't going to believe this, but God called me to kill everybody. And they're like, let's roll, baby. But it's not good enough to get the call, you have to answer the call, and that means you have to do something.
Yeah, do something. Step in the water.
Man.
Raise the staff over the Red Sea. Throw it down on the ground. And one of the things that I really dig about that incredible 2-minute sermon that you got that you just gave is all the unique calls that unique people got in a unique and weird way from the Father. You look at Abraham, 75-year-old farmer, hears the audible voice of God, and then boom, just like you said, he leaves his country. And he goes out looking for a city without foundations, whose builder and maker is God, or city with foundations, whose builder and maker is God. And he heard an audible voice. Now, I haven't watched Rich Christian television in like 20 years. I remember sitting there watching a lot of these people, and I'm like, God told me yesterday, he spoke to me in an audible voice. I'm like, bullshit, lady, you're crazy. If God talked to you in an audible voice, the first thing he would tell you is tear off those 4-inch long eyelashes and take off that pink wig.
And
Okay.
sell some of that gold all over the room. Jeez,
Take that pagoda you and your poor husband are sitting on and melt it down and give it, to some starving kids. But Abraham heard the audible voice. Then you get Aaron in Exodus 13, who gets called via Moses while he's making excuses why he shouldn't be the one that God chose him. Yep. So it's different, man. And like you said, I mean, look at Elisha. Elijah slaps him with his coat and jacket and is like, I'm out. I mean, most people would like, what just happened? What did Elijah mean? What do you want, Lord? It's like he was lucid enough. It's like, all right, something major just happened. I'm going to kill my ox and cut up my plows.
Yeah, these are the things I've been praying about. I have been asking God, what do you want me to do? I will follow you. I'll do anything you say. Boom, opportunity presents itself. It wasn't like, well, if you're praying about it, if you're serious about it, when the opportunity presents itself, if it's God, you got to roll. If you don't, then you're just another person with a wasted potential, wasted calling, wasted ministry, wasted life.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one way the Warrior and Wildmen listener might know that they're called, and I had this guy tell me this the other day after he read the book Pussification. He said, I felt like I was listening to the voice of God, and this was my last wake-up call. This podcast might be your wake-up call. It's waking me up. I know it's wakening Rich up.
I'm fired up.
I want to be alive to his call and his purpose. And again, it comes in weird ways. Abraham hears a voice. Aaron gets it from his brother. Elisha gets fish slap with Elijah's Duluth Trading Company beaver coat. Bam! And here comes the call. Here's another. Joseph got his call from God from a dream.
Yeah.
And so, the point that I want to really rivet down on, man, that you just spawned with the whole Elijah getting slapping Elisha with a jacket, is that the call is not going to be normative. It's going to come in weird, funky ways. And that's the cool thing, like, I went to a great seminary, man. I went to a great seminary, world-class. Seminary was not a bad thing for me. I had some anti-intellectual fundamentalists who say, "Oh, you went to cemetery," and it's like, no, I didn't.
I make those jokes, Doug. I apologize. I love you, but I make those jokes.
Rich, I got the fear of God put back into me by one Dr. R.C. Sproul. Absolutely, probably one of the second most powerful things that ever happened in my life, aside from my conversion, watching Hannah and Regis be born, and watching 2 tornadoes suck dirt in Lubbock, Texas. I'm telling you, what happened to me in seminary was bar none a great thing.
That's awesome.
And however, in regards to the people that graduate with their MDiv or their PhD or something like that, now they wait on the call for somebody in their denomination to say, "Yeah, we'll take you, we'll take you, dumbass." It's like, come on, guys,
say,
really?
Hey, today I got the call.
Yeah, and then
from headquarters.
Yeah, and it's like, no. And listen, I'm not saying that there's not validity to that, because you and I both know that those who served Moses were picked and called by Moses. Paul did the same thing. Yep. We're to know those who labor amongst them. There was the laying on the hands, the choosing. Those are men who are full of faith and good works, filled with the Holy Spirit, apt to teach, blah, blah, blah. And they were called and picked that way. So I'm not disparaging that at all. I'm just trying to illustrate some of our heavyweights, man. Elisha, Abraham, Aaron, Joseph, they didn't have that luxury. They had to wing it on their own, and it came from, Twilight Zone type sources. And I'm not trying to get mystical or funky and greenlight some moron with a stupid wet dream of him being the center of the universe. I'm just trying to table something, to the listener, to be open and ready, because it might not come through an ecclesiastical board, picking the pick of the litter.
Yep. Yeah, and when you're called, it doesn't always happen right away. Like, there's a process, before you do what you think you're going to do. That happened in my life. I got called, and I had been a Christian for about a month, and I was like, I'm going to quit my job and start a church. People were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I read the Bible twice. I got a great discipleship book right here.
Figured out.
Spiritual discipleship. I'll teach this book until, hey, guess what? I didn't go into full-time ministry as my job for 8 years from then. And guess what I did 8 years later, Doug? I went and worked for a pastor. 2 years after that, I started my church. But you know what I've been teaching ever since I started doing youth discipleship in jails and prisons, in juvenile detention centers with my disciples all around I was teaching that same book. You know why? Because God was serious, Doug. What he told me and what he put in my heart to do, it's Spiritual Discipleship by Oswald Sanders, by the way. If you want to, that's an incredible book. I'm still teaching it to my guys. My guys still love it. They've heard it 10 times. They don't care because it's another level. But here's the cool thing. What God told me, people said, that's stupid. You can't do that. That's dumb. Oh, no, it wasn't stupid. It wasn't dumb. It was money. It was gold. It was from heaven. It's what God told me. We weren't close to that being realized, but I started in the process of doing everything that I could do that day. And then it equaled what other people saw as being called and being launched into the ministry and all those type of things. I still did exactly what he told me 1 month after I became a Christian. I did what he said. So those things can be spiritual, it can be awesome, but there is a process at the same time. And part of that process is what, going back to Elisha a little bit, but Elisha didn't get to go. He probably thought, man, God's called me to be a prophet. How do I become a prophet? I'm not in the family of prophets. I'm not in the school of the prophets. I'm over here working. And then one day a crazy prophet says, you're with me, let's roll. So what did he do? He went and served him. He loved Elijah. He served him. That's what I did, Doug. I got up under ministries. I served, gave my best. I submitted myself to discipleship. I was formed by men who imparted things to me, taught me things, corrected me, instructed me, because there's a process, like Joseph. He didn't get to, here's a dream, you're 17, go lead a nation. No, you're an idiot. You don't even know how to make your bed. I'm going to take you to king's school, bro. You're going to do 13 to 14 years of prison, being a slave, and then I'm going to bring it all to pass. But there's a process, right?
Yep. No, and I like this, Rich, and because when I initially felt the call, and listen, I was leading a lot of people to Christ. Mary Margaret and I were. Our Bible studies look like a keg party. There's so many people parked, in weird ways outside of our place. And this guy told me, he's like, you're supposed to be a pastor. And he's like, all right. I knew I was supposed to be on the radio. I knew I was supposed to communicate. I knew I liked doing it in kind of in street type ways, because I'm not a polished cat, even though I look pretty spiffy most of the time.
Most of the time.
From a delivery standpoint, it's I can be a little rough, sometimes a little bit more rough than grandmother's breath.
Whoa.
Hello. That was a Freudian slip. Anyway, so I bumble and I stumble, and I have people all the time like, well, you said this back in there, and you said you're going to reach millions of people, and it didn't happen. It's like, I don't know about that, man. We reached via clashdaily.com, thank you very much, 260 million people and growing, and we're still doing it about a million a month, Rich, and through the podcast, we're up in the hundreds of thousands. It's a process, man.
Yep,
just like you
right.
said. Joseph gets his dream, then Joseph goes through living hell. David says by Samuel, and again, David got his call through Samuel. He had a relationship with God. Samuel's blind. God's like, hey, there's one more. It's like, all right. He sees it's David. David didn't go from Bethlehem to the frickin' throne, even after he did the great accomplishment of killing Goliath in the valley of Elah, man. He had to train for rain, as Rick Godwin points out.
Schooling for ruling.
It took frickin' years, man, before he really hit that place. However, did the call come, and then the process begin.
Yep. And he had levels of anointing. He was anointed different times for different levels of ministry, private anointing, public anointing, And so sometimes we think just because you know the end, God shows you something cool. That doesn't mean you take over the path to get there. You need to follow God, and you need to go through the process. But the first step is, like Jesus said, hey, man, you got to take up your cross, deny yourself, and follow me. You have to be willing to follow him in regard. Doug, I trained up a few couples in my church. So
the call is, so when we're talking about the cross aspect, and I just want to, you to help me clarify it so I can communicate it properly, and for the Wars and Wildmen guys, for them to really get what you're talking about. So when you're talking about the dying to the self, the cross aspect is that it sounds bad because because the cross is an instrument of death, and it sounds like like the way that I had a lot of people put it to me is that you're really not going to like this, but I loved it, Rich. When I died and I left stuff, it's like you're going to have to leave your girlfriend. She's a whore. I'll take another one.
Yeah, I'll get a better one.
You're going to have to leave, you're going to have to leave your job. I work at a car wash. Screw my job. And so there is a death in that, that you're talking about. Like David's no more a shepherd. He's not shepherding sheep. He's shepherding Israel. He's shepherding malcontents in Adullam. Or he's shepherding these badass warriors in Ziklag before he goes into, shepherding Israel and Zion. So the thing that, again, and I know you, so I know you're not saying this, the thing that he's asking you to die to leave, man, don't bemoan it, man, because what you're going to get in return, we're not talking monetary stuff, even though there could be houses and lands and boats and all kinds of stuff. Rich, I've had a wild life, brother, that I couldn't ever imagine, but it had to be at some juncture to where you joyfully say, all right, I'm dead to it.
I'm not
dead
important
to this.
to me. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad.
I'll give you two quotes that kind of show both sides of that about the cross. Tozer said, the old cross is a symbol of death. It stands for the abrupt, violent end of a human being. The man in Roman times who took up his cross and started down the road had already said goodbye to his friends. He was not coming back. He was going out to have it ended. The cross made no compromise, modified nothing, spared nothing. It slew all of the man completely and for good. It did not try to keep on good terms with its victim. It struck cruel and hard, and when it had finished the work, the man was no more. Come on, bro. So that's heavy, right?
Hey,
so
that's Tozer, brother.
So
that's
that
Tozer,
stuff
man.
right there. Okay, that's the crucifying of the old nature, the death of the old man. So that the cross is violent to your old nature. But in spiritual leadership or discipleship, I can't remember which one, by Oswald Sanders, he puts great poems in there, and I love the poems that he posted. I don't remember who wrote this one, but he said, and it's about taking up the cross, and it's about suffering, but at the end, it says, and when you take up the cross, you will find that it's just as burdensome as the wings on a dove. Come on, bro. Come on, man. It's like the stuff that it's killing is killing you. You take it up, and man, it is what empowers you. It's what fuels you. You want to live your call. You cannot do it in the flesh and do it for the glory of God. That cross has to kill your old nature, your selfishness, your fear, your self-dependence, your independence, your rebellion. It's got to kill that. And then you have to embrace it and realize that the power of the Christian life is determined by how close you stay to the cross. And it's not a burden. It's the power, man. The message of the cross is foolishness to those that are perishing. But for those of us to being saved, it is the power of God unto salvation.
So in summation, ladies and genitals, Abraham got called through an audible voice. Rich, sorry, brother.
Just call me Pastor.
Aaron, yes, Pastor. Aaron via his brother Moses. Joseph through a dream. Jacob through the hand of God being with him since he was a wee little lad. Moses through a burning George W. Bush. Joshua via Moses. This is way cool, brother. David through a myopic prophet named Samuel. Peter, Andrew, James, and John, and Ringo, through Christ personally bidding them to become fishers of men. Paul got a violent visitation, got knocked down, man. Timothy via his mama, and then through Paul. This is some interesting stuff, man. How the call come. Here's how I got my call, Rich. Tom Brokaw, 21 years old, NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. My dad and I are sitting there drinking a beer. I'm 21 years old. I work at a gas station. I've been kicked out of college. And I'm on the fast track to success, brother. He does a report of a 14-year-old girl that graduated college. And my dad didn't say anything, but he gave me the side eye, and I could feel it. You know what I'm talking about? Yep. And I felt I'm a loser, and I felt shame. And you know what? I got saved that night through that story because I felt like, I've had enough weed, had enough beer, had enough vagina. I've had it all. I'm 21 years old, and you got a 14-year-old girl dusting me, graduating from college, and I just got kicked out of college. And then all these thoughts, just this broadcast, a music, a song. I remember Sammy Hagar in 1981, 2 years prior, singing Planets on Fire. He's got a verse, and it says, all this planet's on fire, all of Satan's desires. He's seen the rise, he's seen the fall. He's here to see us all burn in hell. And everybody else is like, yeah. And the Holy Spirit grabbed those lyrics. It's like, that's where you're going, numbnuts.
Uh-oh.
And then so the Sammy Hagar, Tom Brokaw, and then just boom. That's when, again, the call to salvation and the call to come and die came. Weird stuff, people. Weird stuff. If you're God's chosen, and if he's called you to a particular purpose, get ready, man. In the next hours, days, weeks, months to come, he's going to start jacking with you if the penny hadn't dropped on your purpose yet.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's really good. That is awesome. Because God uses all those things. He's prepping you. A lot of people, like I was saying with Elisha, it wasn't like he was just hanging out at work and a prophet called him. I believe, the Bible doesn't say this, is my conjecture. I believe that God had been preparing him for a long time. I believe that David, God was preparing him for a long time. He's like, man, I was born for more than this, and I know God has a plan for my life. And then when it happened, he didn't know what to do about it. He went back to take care of the sheep, but he was faithful to answer God at every step, that's how you fulfill the call. You don't get the whole thing in the plan. Abraham went out, like you referred to earlier. Abraham went out without knowing where he was going. That's what Hebrews 11 says. So when we see that, you have to understand that God calls you. You know you're called for a purpose. He's prepping you. And when each step reveals itself to you, you have to obey every time. Look, when Jesus says, take up your cross, that's daily. He said, we got to take up our cross daily. You don't get to die once and then now everything's laid out. You got to die to yourself every day, because another one of the great poems in Oswald Sanders' book, it says, Lord, give me a backbone of steel against myself, the coward with the small voice. Come on, man. And he's like, and then another one said, oh, what I owe to the hammer and the anvil of the Lord. And so know that if you're called, you have to do the next step, the next thing. If you're not doing anything, well, then you're not going to fulfill your call. You have to, it has to happen.
And again, great point on Elisha and David. And, it first and foremost, like we talked about in the Get Your Butt Off the Ruts, is that we are called into fellowship with the Son.
Yep.
Enoch hung out with God. The only thing it says about Enoch is that he walked with God for 300 years. And then he got his calling.
Yeah, God liked him. God liked him.
Yeah. No, and so if you really don't know, what to do, then be faithful. Get in close proximity to the Son. Read the Word of God like never before. Listen to it like never before. Get some worship music on that'll make you drool your Slurpee down your shirt. Embrace yourself, because it's coming.
Yep.
Because God's got a lot of stuff that He wants to do in a multifaceted way in the various sectors of society.
Yeah. And
He says that His eyeballs are going all over this planet trying to find somebody whose heart is completely His, according to Chronicles.
Well, Doug, what's the guy's name that died with the Indians in South America? He was a martyr and he was killed. His wife became famous.
Jim Elliot.
Jim Elliot, yeah. Jim Elliot had a great quote. I love this quote. He says, and this, to me, this is the key not only to following Christ, but to fulfilling your call. He says, wherever you're at, be all there. Too many people are waiting to activate, to make it happen. They're like, well, when this happens, or I've had people in my church that are like, well, I would start leadership training, but I'm leaving in 3 months. And I tell them, well, do leadership training until you leave. And then when you go, wherever you go, you got some more tools, you're ready. And you won't waste your time. And then, Doug, I've watched people say, no, I don't want to do that. And they've stayed a year and a half, 2 years, and they've wasted this time because they're waiting for the next thing. When this happened, no, wherever you're at, be all there. Commit 100. If you go somewhere, Doug, and you're hanging out with some Christians, you have a chance to serve, you're there for 2 weeks, serve. Get in there like I'm going to be here forever.
Yeah.
Then you don't regret anything, Doug. You do not regret one thing. You have to be excellent. You have to give your best wherever you're at. And that's how you fulfill your call, because those doors open themselves as you're faithful. If you are not faithful, you don't obey, you don't follow, you're not going to see the next door because you're still back 2 doors down. And there's a great quote. I'm sure you've heard this. They say, hey, if the reason you can't hear God's voice, if you haven't heard God's voice, you need to go back and obey the last thing that he told you to do that you didn't do. Why would he tell you something else if you didn't do the last thing? Go back and think of the last thing he told you to do it. And then the next thing he tells you to do it. And that's how we follow the call. That's how we end up in a place that you could never plan the journey.
Yeah, and by the way, charismatics, God talked to the father of our faith, Abraham, only 3 times. So dial down with he speaks to you in 40 different ways and in every 40 minutes.
He speaks to me every day, Doug. Every time I open my Bible.
Yeah, through the word.
Time. Every time I open my Bible.
Through the word.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing. These 11 examples slap us, ladies and gents, with the reality that calls come in various ways: text, email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, alphabet soup,
Warriors
Ouija
and
board.
Wildmen podcasts.
Ouija board. Well, maybe not the Ouija
Not the
board.
Ouija board.
Hey, Rich, did you ever play the Ouija board?
Not one time.
You know, when we lost that centerpiece, man, I always noticed that the evil spirits always misspelled the same words that my brother does. It's weird.
It's weird. The devil works like that.
God can call you through a burning bush, a dream, a desire, a visitation, getting slapped with a coat, through your family, through leader recognition. Folks, all of it's real, all of it's unique, all of it's valid. Like Rich said, man, just be warm and toasty and doing what you know to do that's right, because the call's coming and it's going to be a great thing, and we want to celebrate it with you. If you got a great testimony, if you've launched out and into the unknown, we'd like to hear about it. We're here to cheer you on, man, and pray that God, through you, does this thing called create a big, deep, nasty, god-awful wound and scar in Satan's haggard backside, man.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, we got to make
What do we do, bro?
Yeah, we got to go to warriorsandwildmen.com, subscribe, like us, love us, rate us. I'm all fired up now. If you want to support us, you can surely do that. There's a place there. It's tax deductible. We're not begging for your money. We're inspiring people that believe in the cause and what we're doing, because we are getting a lot of messages of people that we are inspiring and helping. That's the goal. If you want to help us push that out and make it happen, we'll be glad to provide you with the necessary tax information. I know that doesn't sound spiritual, but it's practical, you know. And we would love to have you join us and help us with that stuff. We want to make a difference. We're not done. And we want to inspire you to make your difference. Be who God's called you to be, man. Do it 100%. Jesus said, wisdom is known by her children. If people don't believe in you, you just follow God and you be honest, be sincere, follow him with the right heart. It's his job to steer you and direct you. He's not going to do it if you're not moving. You do it, you end up in the right place. And your life will be the testimony that you did what God called you to do.